We're now joined by Professor of Economics, Ken Ife. Thank you so much for joining us on News Night tonight.
Prof. Thank you for having me.
A lot has been said about, the palliatives in place of fuel subsidy and all of that. I'm sure you'd like to weigh in on that in the course of our discussion. But let's start off from this Naira devaluation. A lot has been said about what it means for Nigeria's economy. Where do you stand on it? Because just 1 week after the call for, unifying of the parallel and the bank rates, that convergence actually happened. What do you think will happen to the Nigerian economy?
I think I'm happy that the president took those two. I called it, he fired 2 bullet points. There are 2 shots that he fired. It would have been better on a normal day to have a package before you announce the removal of the split. But Nigeria has waited for far too long that you can accept that he could do that. And then hope that within a subsequent 1 month, we will start thinking about a package and what form it could take. And I think they're working on it. It's a work in progress. I'm not happy to call this unification, because we are not actually unifying 41 items that are delisted from forex eligibility by central bank are on the code end with the black market. You can't actually say unifying. You can say convergence.
Right.
And that convergence will take place to the extent that you're able to bring in dollar into the equation. Because people just keep talking about the demand side. No, people don't want to talk about the supply of forex, the dollars. And the supply is that 79% is coming from crude proceeds, which we don't find because of the deal that they did, the swap deal the NNPC did with foreign refiners, that we're not looking for the dollar. But eventually what you get is you get petrol instead of the thing, and then they're telling you to go and borrow 500 billion every month. We'll come to that. The second one is 11% of the forex revenue is coming from gas. So between these two is 90% of our forex. So we need to have more interrogation of what happens to that 90% and how it could be enhanced and improved. Because the other 10% is neither here nor there. You have diaspora remittance, you have FDI that has been declining with speed, and then you have forex, foreign portfolio investment that has reacted positively to what has happened. And that is good. But they are neither here nor there, because they come in and go. Any minute you cough, they will all vanish. Then, of course, you may have some other invincibles. So there are many more ways we can increase dollar supply. I have about 9 different ways you can do that.
Right.
Then we need to focus on that. Because if you don't talk about that, you keep on weighing in on the demand side, and it's going to be one-way traffic.
I
and
think you should
dollar.
address that.
The dollar will continue.
Yeah,
the dollar will continue to slide. I have to tell you that.
The 9 ways you have to raise dollar supply. But just before you do that, I'm happy you mentioned the main source of our national income, which is the crude oil. Now, the 2023 budget was predicated on 435 Naira per dollar. What now befalls that budget as we speak, before you now reel out ways of raising dollars?
Yeah, I mean, the budget is one thing. The reality is what happens on the field. What we found, normally from 2014, NNPC will send $3 billion every month to central bank. And of course, they come back and get some of that in respect to their transactions. But what they were sending is, for nearly 2 years, they weren't sending anything. And then you see the governors not getting anything on the SS Crude account, nothing is being shared. So what they did, there was only about 300 million that are sending recently. So what happened is that CBN itself needs to disburse $1.8 billion every month to service our debts and to provide for some of those imports and things we know. But why can they do that? They're printing money in CBN. They can print dollars in CBN. So they're depending on receipts, and they can find that. And then on the other hand, there is $4.6 billion being requested for import. 4.6. Add that 1.8 to 4.6 is almost $7 billion on one hand, against what? 10% of the forex and about 300 million they get from NNPC. So it is not an equation that is ever going to balance. And there is nothing, we're not selling anything. And we ought to be value adding and then exporting. And that is where devaluation will make sense. Because if you are exporting any manufactured commodity, then you will have triple orders. Once your price comes down, the orders will flood, the order book will be flooded. But we're not having that. Because the oil and gas, which is our primary export, the prices are determined by somebody else.
Absolutely.
And we have no role to play. In fact, all we are doing is fighting whether the quantity we are producing is going to be maintained or increased and all of that. You have no control over the price or the quantity.
So, go ahead and reel out what you think is the best
now,
reform.
the first
You have
thing,
9 points.
Now, the first thing is this. You have 41 items, and I think we should add more to those 41 items.
Oh.
It's not about removing it. It's not, and I don't even accept the argument of World Bank that you should carry it and put it into the basket of, no, it's not, it's not. We should add more. And secondly, I've always maintained that under ECOWAS common external tariff, we're not allowed to do anything we like with the rates, with the duties. But we have levy instruments, which we could use to augment. So you can use levy instrument to add 10% or 20% on those 41 items, so that those who are spending this money and hitting up our foreign exchange and requesting them for that frivolous import, they should pay more tax. Secondly, ask them to pay this tax in dollars, so that they know how serious we are about this matter. If they're sourcing the dollar to buy them, let them pay us that tax in dollars. And VAT, bump up that VAT to 17.5%. Not 7.5%, because you don't want those. But it would have been easy for Nigeria to say, ban this import. No, you can't do that. Because you're going to embarrass even our sister, who is the Director General of the WTO. And secondly, other members will be running to the tribunal, against Nigeria. It's not the way to go. But you are allowed to bump up the effective duty by using levy instrument according to ECOWAS Treaty, CET. So that's fine. But we're not doing that. Although the minister did a little bit of it, I think it's about 5% in this current Finance Act. You put about 5%, and I say congratulations, but put more, increase it.
Oliver Twist.
Now, so right. when we look at that and see how far we can go, because in the end of the day, it's about depressing that, and then look at what may happen. You carry this and drop it into the NAFEX window. That's 41 item. You are now going to kill off all the industries that have started producing those your toothpicks and all that stuff. As a result of this, you finish them. Just as textiles, some already getting into textile manufacturing, you finish them because the flood will continue.
All right, Prof, let's put you on hold. We'll quickly take a short breather and return and continue with this discussion. We'll talk about whether there will be a need to recapitalize the banks based on what we're seeing so far. Do stay with us. All right, thanks for staying with us. You're still watching Newsnight. Professor Ken Ife is still with us talking about Nigeria's economic realities right now. Thank you so much for staying with us. Before I went on, of course, you were trying to make some points, but let's quickly talk about this World Bank latest economic development report on Nigeria. The World Bank says, yeah, with all you're doing, President Tinubu, kudos, but you need to make the pain, less more bearable for Nigerians. What's your take on this World Bank report, first of all?
The World Bank reeled out some statistics. Just some of them relies on what the NBS has said, and they also have the very strong statistical department, just as Central Bank is one of the best in Africa. Now, great that they recognize what the president has done, and the president has done a good job by taking those 2 points. But I'm concerned about the fact that they base their report looking more on the impact of the subsidy removal and the potential benefit of convergence in currencies. There are many other things that you have to look at before you conclude that all of this will lead to growth.
Right.
It doesn't necessarily lead to growth. First of all, the subsidy, where is the subsidy? The subsidy doesn't exist because you haven't got the money. It is money we are going to borrow. It's not there. So before you start planning what you're going to do with it, where is the money? We intended to go and borrow it because NNPC says go and borrow it. But the money is just not. So I don't know why all these arguments are going on, how you're going to share it when you haven't got it. And the second thing I want to say is we have a subsisting law, Fiscal Responsibility Act 2007, that governs lending and borrowing across all levels of government. And that law is very explicit on why and how and what you should borrow for. It says all levels of government can only borrow for capital expenditure and human resource development. And human resource development, you're looking at education, health, and employment. It doesn't include poverty reduction. It doesn't include borrowing to pay salaries. It doesn't include palliatives. It doesn't include any of those. That does not mean that you cannot do those. Central World Bank has grants regimes. They can give us grant and we'll spend anyhow you want to spend it. Government generates internally generated revenue. They can use that and share it, whatever they want to do. It is their money that they generated. But the law says you cannot borrow for anything other than for capital expenditure and for human resource development. And that is education, health, and employment. Now, it also goes further to say this borrowing must be based on cost-benefit analysis. So that the intention of that law is that whatever you are putting your money in is capable of repaying, that activity is capable of repaying that money. So I don't know what you're repaying when you bring it and share it. I don't know.
Prof, now,
and I want to tell you a bit more. The law actually goes out to one financial institutions and said any lending outside this framework is unlawful. He said it in there. Any lending outside the framework of this FRA 2007 is unlawful. So what it means, if you keep on borrowing and lending, all lenders must know that this law exists. And when the chips are down, you get a cry for you to remove that because you knew that you're not supposed to lend that money for that purpose.
What you're saying apparently is that the World Bank is enabling Nigeria, quote unquote,
fiscal irresponsibility.
In fiscal irresponsibility. Anyway, you mentioned cost-benefit analysis. When we talk about devaluation, is it all thumbs down? Are there no positive effect at all? Because what about? I was thinking of the impact on investors outside of Nigeria, because when the value of Naira comes down, how do investors outside the country, how do they take advantage of that situation?
Well, the thing is, the devaluation, is a lot more complex than that. Foreign investors are interested in our economy for different reasons. There are the foreign direct investment is driving down, is going down.
That's right,
because it is not about what you think or your speculation. They are looking at structural factors that are going to make it difficult for them to invest in the economy. Studies suggest that 68% of manufacturers provide power for themselves 90% of the time. And many investors are not prepared to borrow money, go to their board and say, authorize me to borrow $2 billion and invest in Nigeria. And oh, wait a minute, you have to include 500 million for building infrastructure. Not many of them are going to hear you out. So they want to go anywhere there is infrastructure or any guarantee that the law has changed. If you can take it as part of your profit, that's fine. But you have to make that profit first. And you have to make that investment first. So that's a different thing. You have the foreign portfolio investment that dances around and they've been jumping up with joy over the last 1 month, which is good. But they don't last. They come and go. Once you cough, they all disappear overnight. And then they're also watching the interest rates and then watching the negative real interest rate that we have. Because you cannot have inflation at 22.41 or something.
22.04.
Yeah. And then you're telling them to come and buy treasury bills at 5%. I mean, you're not telling them to bring their money 12 months later. They would gain 5%, and then they will lose 22.4%.
So what you're saying, in effect, is
what I'm saying?
It will take more than devaluing of the Naira to attract foreign direct investment.
Absolutely, because you're just hoping. You're just hoping that if you do this, then they will come.
So what's the basis really of this move? What's the basis of this move now to devalue?
What I'm saying is that you can only get traction, a sustainable traction, sustainable. You could go up and see how it goes. It goes up and down, goes up and down. That's how it's been going. It will continue to dance like that, but it will, if you plot the graph is going to be going up and down, and then it's still going down, it's still going down. That's what it's going to be doing. It's still heading in one direction until you address the other side of the equation, which is the supply side. I've always said anything relating to price, whether it's inflation, or is the exchange rate, or MPI rate, or anything, as long as price is connected to it, you must be looking at the resolution of demand and supply. So where is the supply? To tame the demand. Or you do something to suppress demand. And one of the ways to suppress the demand, those 41 items, I've already enumerated what you can do to suppress the demand. But otherwise, we just have to keep and watch, and then the Naira will just keep going.
We'll see how things pan out. Professor Kenefe, a delight always to have you on Newsnight. Thank you very much.